has something really interesting, unique, and fundamentally new and different to show you. They are representing Lucid Sight and the Crypto Space Commander, or CSC universe, which is going to be launching soon on Steam. And the title of this little chat is called Star Trek Coming to the ETH blockchain, which sounds almost violent. But what it means is that first there was Bitcoin, and then there was Ethereum, but now perhaps there is gold-pressed platinum. So please welcome Mr. Fazri Zubair and Steve Yoshimura, game designers and the co-founders of Lucid Sight. Hello. Are you staying here? Awesome. All right, guys.
Hi, everyone. We were just introduced, I'm Fazri Zubair, co-founder of Lucid Sight. We're a game studio in Los Angeles, California. And with me is
Steve Yoshimura. I'm the game director of the game.
And today we're here to talk to you about blockchain technology, a fundamental way we feel it's changing digital ownership of items. Star Trek and a game CSC that we're creating that will have a Star Trek event later this month. So to get right into it, Lucid Sight was founded in 2015, and we consider ourselves a frontier game studio working on technologies that aren't typically seen or mainstream adopted yet. For example, VR, AR, and blockchain technology. We've worked with multiple major brands. We've worked with Viacom, Warner Brothers, Major League Baseball, and the Dodgers team on different products. So first, geeking out moment here at the Star Trek Convention 2019. It's actually my first convention ever, so super excited to be here.
Yeah.
Something for you guys and something that I'm passionate about. And along those lines, this was me last week when I found out I'm going to get to present here. So to start off, I want to talk a little bit about childhood memories. I remember watching Star Trek for the first time when I was 10 years old. I came home from school, came home from school, my dad was sitting on the sofa with my uncle. They were watching the show with this bald guy commanding a starship, and I didn't know what it was. But by the end of it, I was just completely wrapped in the universe Gene Roddenberry has created for us. Star Trek really kick-started my passion for science and my desire to pursue game development as a career. And part of that is, in my childhood, there was an aspect of collecting that I want to kind of get into today. So as a child, I collected Pokemon cards, Pogs, Magic the Gathering cards. I know Steve, you probably collected some too as well.
Yeah, pretty much. I was into that whole collectible card system, like Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Yeah.
And with those collectible cards, there was a sense of pride and ownership. When you opened up a pack and you saw this rare gold foil card, like, wow, this is mine, I get to keep it. But I remember something very distinct that happened to me was the fact that when I first realized how valuable these cards were, not when I opened up a pack and found something neat, it was actually when I first traded a card with a friend of mine for 2 cards I wanted. And the fact that I was able to do that is really what makes collectibles valuable, and something that up till today hasn't existed in digital, but is now going to be possible with Star Trek, CSC, and blockchain technology. So that kind of brings us to the future. So as a child, I was watching Star Trek Next Generation for the first time. Never thought I'd ever get to see Picard back on the screen. We got Star Trek Picard coming out next year. And this kind of also is what I allude to with collectibles. As a child collecting Pogs and Pokemon cards, I never really expected that I would have that same passion for collecting in the future, especially with digital items. And really, we don't know what the future holds. And blockchain, which is a relatively new technology, only about 2 years old, has really fundamentally changed how we see digital items and how our players see digital items. As a side note, this was also me during watching the trailer a couple times last week when it came out. So today, we're going to talk about CSC, a space MMORPG that we're creating, and a Star Trek cross-universe event that will be happening later this month. true digital items. And true digital items, similar to Bitcoin, are items that are provably scarce, can be transferred between individuals, and cannot be taken away, but can be lost, and we'll get into that a little bit. Also, we're going to talk about blockchain technology, what it is in 2019, and some use cases in the 24th century where blockchain technology might have existed in the Star Trek universe in some interesting ways. And then we're also going to talk about the future of blockchain technology, how it's actually almost a paradigm shift in how we design games and how we consider digital items moving forward. So what is blockchain technology? Simply put, a blockchain is a distributed database hosted on thousands, if not tens of thousands of computers. It stores data in what are considered blocks. And then these blocks are chained together by timestamps using a cryptographic principle. This basically means that a blockchain is a sequentially connected set of data that users can suggest changes to that then need to be verified before they're added to the chain. The process of adding data to a blockchain is what really makes it secure. It requires that over 50% of the computers that are in this network need to come to consensus that that data being added is correct. For example, if I wanted to give Steve 10 Bitcoin, I would need to submit a transaction to the blockchain, use my super secret password, and then it would know it's really me transferring 10 Bitcoin to Steve. In the past, if this was just any other file on a computer or a video game, there's multiple different ways where this can be manipulated. I could go into the file, I could edit it, look at Steve's account, look at my account, subtract, add, without any type of permission or validation. What blockchain lets us do through a system of consensus is get 51% of all computers in the network to agree that me, Fosri, are really trying to give Steve 10 items, and then he will actually get it. And it's actually kind of interesting. When we were making this slide, we were considering blockchain technology, and the Bitcoin blockchain in particular, and we came to a realization. There's thousands of independent computers in the Bitcoin network. They're connected together via what they're called nodes, and they come to decisions via collective consensus. Actually, one might think, is Bitcoin the 2019 equivalent of the Borg Collective? Bitcoin today might be an early version. If you think about it, the Borg Collective, thousands of independent minds, thank you. Thousands of independent minds connected together that make decisions via consensus. And even more striking, the Borg fly around in cubes, Bitcoin stores data in blocks. Coincidence? Probably. So let's talk about Bitcoin a little bit, which what I would consider is a great example of what a true digital asset is. A digital item that's scarce, that can't be copied, that can be traded securely, and that today has a high perceived value. Bitcoin has a fundamental use case. It could track who owns Bitcoin and how much. It was launched in 2009 via the publishing of a white paper anonymously. The creator of Bitcoin has never come forward, but is known by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, and only 21 million Bitcoin can ever exist. And this is what's really interesting about Bitcoin and digital items that are secured by blockchain. There's the way the system's designed, the way the algorithms are put together, you can provably say that there's only going to be 21 million of these. No one can ever create more of these, and they can be securely transferred between individuals. And there's some proof to this, that this works. And I'm going to point towards a Fortune magazine article in 2017. They did some analysis and surveys, and they found that 2.56 million Bitcoin have been lost. That means irrecoverable. Someone had it, they lost their private key or lost access to it, and can never be accessed again. Back in 2017, Bitcoin was about $7,800 a coin. That's about $20 billion. I think there's a lot of proof here that if Bitcoin was able to be hacked or be able to transfer it, if someone could just somehow recover this data, they would have, because there's a great incentive to do so. Today, in 2019, it's actually estimated that about 4 million Bitcoin are lost, and the price of Bitcoin is hovering around $10,000. And the loss of Bitcoin is actually something I know very well. My wife, who's sitting right here, can attest to it. Back in 2010, I might have had 900 Bitcoin in a hard drive. We were moving. I was lazy to pack it. She said, "Why don't you keep that? You never know what it might be." I said no, and it's 970 Bitcoin lost, a couple $1 million today. The lesson here is always listen to your wife. So we're going to fast forward a little bit to Ethereum. This is actually the fundamental blockchain that we use in our games and a lot of other game development studios have been using. Ethereum was founded in 2015 and works very similar to Bitcoin, using a cryptographic principle to connect blocks of data. But unlike Bitcoin, Ethereum added an additional feature called a smart contract. A smart contract is basically a way of writing a little bit of computer code into the block that can do some type of verification and add some additional data. So with the smart contract, developers were able to create something called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. These non-fungible tokens allowed users to add more information than quantity. So instead of saying, "Steve, I'm going to give you 10 Bitcoin," and the blockchain would record that, I could say, "Steve, I'm going to give you ship number 1 from CSC. Ship number 1 from CSC on the blockchain is a destroyer. You now own that destroyer, and now there's an immutable record on the blockchain that your ownership has changed." Just like Bitcoin, there's a super secret password that I have that I use when I send it to Steve, and once Steve has it, there's no way for me to pull it back without him sending it to me. This is the fundamental basis of true digital assets and what makes them as real as a physical good. So that brings us to Star Trek and CSC. So CSC is a game that we've created that utilizes the Ethereum blockchain as a fundamental layer to create scarcity in both the resources users collect, the ships that are created, and even the interactions players have with the game itself. Later this month, on August 29th, we will have their Divergence Rift will form, and we'll be introducing 6 iconic ships that we'll show you here in a little bit into the CSC universe. And the exciting thing about this is going to be the first time Star Trek blockchain ships will actually be available in a game. These ships will be digital, just like Bitcoin, but will also share the same attributes of being truly scarce, being able to be stored, and potentially even being able to be lost. This time I'm backing up my hard drive. So let's talk about some examples of this. So back in 2017, a company called Axiom Zen launched a product called CryptoKitties. And this was the first real use case of blockchain technology in Ethereum to create true digital items. It went viral, and in December 2017, they had sold several of the first generation of these cats, which they only created 50,000 of, for over $100,000 each. $100,000 for digital cats that had provable ownership. I don't think they were expecting it, and we, at the time, who were also working on a blockchain secure digital item project, was just amazed to see this type of reception. And this was exciting, but we're like, is this going to happen again? Well, it has, and it continues to have today. One example is in our game CSC. Early on in 2018, we decided to auction off the first player-owned station. This is something anyone in our game can go, harvest resources, work with their guild or clan, build the station, deploy it in the game. We put this first one up for auction. It sold for a staggering $54,000. Later that year, we had launched a game with Major League Baseball, where we digitized and recreated the baseball card as 3D AR figures. These figures started selling in secondary markets for substantial amounts of money, where we would sell them for $5 a piece. There was an Angels team that resold 9 players for $20,000. The greatest example of this was a legendary Bryce Harper. Just like a gold foil baseball card, this was a legendary version of a digital item that was bought by a collector for $7,500. Another company created a game called Neon District, sold their boss for $26,000. And then CryptoKitties, the one that originally started this, actually had a sale of their CryptoKitty Dragon for $172,000. Collectible card games, there's several of those out now. There is one that also uses blockchain to secure the items, had a successful auction for a unique card for $61,000. And the most recent example of this is with Animoca Brands and their game F1 Delta Time. Animoca took the F1 franchise. They're creating a game that utilizes blockchain secure digital scarcity and auctioned off that first car. That first car went for $110,000 just a few months ago. So at this point, we really need to ask ourselves, why are people spending such large amounts of money on digital items? How is this different from a sword in World of Warcraft or a ship in EVE Online? Well, I think fundamentally it's the way you can behave with the item and what you can do with it. And this comes to how digital items are stored. So digital items can be stored in blockchain wallets. And a blockchain wallet can be anything from a flash drive to a piece of paper that has this super secret password, the hash that you see in this image over here. Once your item is transferred into this hash, and if that is the only copy of the hash, if that hash is lost, you lose the flash drive, you lose the piece of paper, or just like I lost my hard drive, you can never recover that item. It will exist on the blockchain forever, but it'll be associated with something that no one will ever be able to access. And this tiny change, the fact that users can provably be the only person to own an item, and had the ability to lose it, or trade it, or sell it, is what changed how people perceive these digital goods, and why we're seeing across multiple games and multiple different companies a sea change in how their player communities value these items. So this brings us to digital equaling physical in a way. So just like a t-shirt, I can ask Steve for the shirt he's having on now. Steve owns that shirt. When he gives it to me, I own that shirt. Steve might not own the content on that shirt or the IP, but he can exchange that ownership. Now, if I did do that right now, Steve would be shirtless on stage. I don't think he would, but that thing. I don't think he would, but that's an example of Steve having control and ownership over an item. Same with our game in CSC, you can own the ship, you might not own our IP, but you're able to own and trade that ownership. So I can take my digital destroyer and send it to Steve, and at that point in the game, I can't play with it anymore, I don't see it anymore, it's not in my inventory, but Steve has full access for it. And that's because our game uses the blockchain to reinforce and validate ownership before letting people use that item. So just like a physical good now, here's an item that I could give to someone else. They could own it independently. If Steve never plays CSC, he still owns that ship. He could put it on a piece of paper and say, here's my collection. He could add it to his will. He could leave it to his grandkids. This was never possible before blockchain technology and traditional items. Just jump right in there. So the next slide is, let's talk a little bit about CSC. I want to show you a brief trailer about the gameplay and some of the assets we have coming to
Yeah.
Thank you. So as you can see, CSC is a stylized space MMORPG. It consists of virtual worlds of solar systems that are based off our Milky Way galaxy. And later this year, we're going to have several iconic Star Trek ships available, playable in our sandbox. At this point, I want to invite Steve up and talk a little bit about the game as one of its lead designers, and show you the ships that we have coming this year.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you doing, Steve?
Doing good. All right. All right, good. We're just going to go over CSC, just a brief overview of what the game is. So CSC is a real-time sandbox space MMO where it's basically a player-owned economy, similar to EVE Online. Players command their own starships, and they can undertake missions, and mine for resources, acquire new skills, and basically go toward galactic dominance, yes. So there'll be more than 900 systems in the game that players can go out and explore. Essentially, players can kind of fly out into the fringes of space and kind of carve out their own little ecosystem out there, kind of build from that. They can basically vie for space dominance. Alright, so here's just a few screenshots of what the game is like, just a little snippet of what CSC is like. Players can basically go out there, mine for resources, kind of refine those resources and craft items, craft starships. Everything you craft and everything you mine in CSC is play-to-own, so you own that. It's a blockchain item. You can trade that with other players and do what you want. Basically, CSC, in a nutshell, is kind of an exploration game. You can go out there, you can specialize in any type of gameplay you want. You want to be a space miner, go out there, mine for resources, and trade them onto the marketplace. You can do that. You can basically transport players and colonists to other star systems. You can basically go into combat, fight off space pirates, AI space drones, stuff like that.
That's the limit.
Yeah, exactly. You can basically do what you will. It is a sandbox game. You can pretty much carve out your own destiny. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this game, or this event. Basically, the Divergence event will launch on August 29th. It's based off of one of the episodes in Voyager. In Voyager, there was an episode called Deadlock, in which case there was a divergence field that's kind of split Voyager into two. We're kind of using that as kind of inspiration for this event. So what happens is, in the game universe, it's actually in the game, so players can actually visit this area if they want to. But what happens is a rift opens up between our universe, the CSC universe, and the Star Trek Prime universe, and ships will become basically falling into the CSC universe. So we chose 6 ships for this event. We can go over them. All right, the first ship is the Starship Enterprise from the original series. This is an in-game shot. It's pretty remarkable, the detail. It's very, very accurate to exactly what the show is.
Yeah, a little bit similar to like a physical collectible. You know, our team used a lot of Star Trek reference when they were creating this. They spent a lot of time crafting the textures and the polygons and the details in it. They did a phenomenal job of recreating the Star Trek aesthetic in our game. And just like that physical collectible, there's individuals that might own this just admire the craftsmanship.
Exactly. So the very first one of this ship will be auctioned off. It'll actually have a unique blockchain ID or a game ID of 1701.
Yeah, so all blockchain assets in the game have a serial number, just similar to a trading card or other types of collectibles. We just happen to have the serial number 1701 not used yet in the CSC universe. So we're going to assign that number to this first ship, just as an extra little Easter egg for the first person to purchase.
Exactly. The second ship up is the USS Enterprise D. Everyone knows this ship. I'm sure everyone thinks this is like one of the best ships in this.
Classic Next Generation, the card on the bridge, my childhood right here, I love it.
Exactly. The detail on the ship also is very show accurate.
Yeah, I love to tell the story. When our artist was first making the concept of this, he ensured that we had the exact number of windows on this Enterprise, down to the T. Though there is some discrepancy even in the fan lore of exactly how many there are. Promise Steve I would not ask him exactly how many there are.
Don't ask that question.
Not asking you, Steve, how many windows are on the Enterprise D?
3,273.
I would need to confirm.
Next up is the IKS Return from Deep Space Nine. This is the Klingon bird of prey. This shot is amazing.
Yeah, this was exciting because we definitely wanted to have at least one non-Federation ship in the game. A lot of us have agreed like the art and the aesthetic of this ship is phenomenal in CSC. Our team even went through and made the detail where the bird of prey wings can be adjustable into the 3 different modes: cruise, landing, and combat.
Yeah. You can see here, Return is with a couple of the CSC starships. Those are Phoenix cruisers. Also, Return has the Klingon cloaking device, so that when it's brought over into the CSC universe, this ship can cloak. Next up is the USS Voyager from Star Trek Voyager.
My favorite ship.
Yep.
I'd say like Star Trek Voyager is probably the series I grew up watching, where Enterprise and Next Generation existed before I was born, or right after when I was really young, actually. Voyager, I remember watching the pilot and then watching every episode on Channel 13 till the finale.
Exactly. The cool thing about this ship is it actually comes custom equipped with ablative hull armor from the last episode. So that's a little special tidbit for this one. Also, when the ship goes into FTL, the nacelles will raise, just like the show. And another little tidbit is the speed of this starship at maximum power is 9.975. A little accuracy in that point. So,
Maximum warp speed, not 10?
not 10. All right. Next up, this is actually my personal ship, the USS Defiant from Voyager, or not Voyager, from DS9. Basically, this is the first Defiant, so it does come equipped with the Romulan cloaking device. So in our universe, this Defiant can cloak. You can see a couple of the ships with CSC in the background as well. But yeah, this one's definitely a tough little ship.
I think the first Federation warship in the Prime universe.
Alright, and finally we have the USS Rio Grande, which is the runabout from DS9. Basically, we wanted to kind of round out our ships in varying sizes to kind of complement what we have in our CC universe. So the shuttlecraft kind of complements our shuttle size in our game as well. So
No comment on the shuttle. Now, the shuttle is actually a great ship, primarily because we wanted to keep scarcity as a factor in the release of this first set. We wanted a ship that everyone could have a taste of, and that's going to be the shuttle, which will be generally available.
exactly. Alright, so those were the 6 ships that we're going to actually launch with this event. I'll pass it over to Fonzie to go over a little more.
Thank you, Steve. So at this point, I kind of wanted to talk about the sandbox. So just like a toy in real life, where you take it and make believe and play in a sandbox, as in CSC, we consider our universe a sandbox for our users. They could choose to do whatever they'd like, form guilds, set up alliances, claim territory, create rules and law. And what's really nice about digital ownership and these digital items is we really treat them like they're toys. When you get the Starship Enterprise, you can bring it into the CSC sandbox, you can play with it in our universe alongside our other ships, or you can just keep it as memorabilia or collectible. And this actually gets me to my final topic here, which is the changing value of digital. And this is something we've talked about a lot in the office, and we feel it's a sea change that's coming, and it has been coming for some years, but blockchain technology is really empowering us and our users to take advantage of this. There is a change in gaming communities. When you invest 100 hours in World of Warcraft to get a legendary sword, after you're done with the game, you no longer just want to let it sit there in your account. You might want to keep it as a badge of achievement. Or maybe you want to resell it and be able to go play something else. We're able to do that with everything else we have in life: cars, homes, toys, collectibles. Once we're done with it, there's some perceived value it still has to some other individual, and we're able to exchange that. With NFTs and true digital items using blockchain technology, you can now do this with digital items as well, just as secure, just as safe, and even more provable and traceable in terms of ownership history and provenance. I'd like to use the example of buying a Rembrandt or a Jackson Pollock. When you buy that painting, you might spend $1 million on it. You don't feel $1 million poorer, you feel you have an asset that's worth that. Similar to when you buy a true digital item, you might spend $50,000 on a space station, but And I don't think that player felt $50,000 poor. He felt he had something of value for that $50,000 that he gets to utilize, play, and maybe sell one day. So let's just hop over to CSC real quick and talk about what true digital items and blockchain technology has done for this gaming community. CSC is a relatively small game. We have 17,000 players that have signed up so far. We're in a closed alpha, opening up actually next week to the general audience on Steam. And we already have 5 major guilds, 2 of which, since the Star Trek announcement, have updated their names. We now have a Ferengi Alliance and a Board Collective in the game. There's 1,000 active players that are currently playing the alpha and already creating some interesting political intrigue and conflict. Let's hop over to this slide real quick. For example, the CSC Times is an e-newsletter that was created by one of the guilds, Dark Horizons. Or actually, it was created by a player in the Dark Horizon Guild. And he uses this to inform the community about activities that have happened in-game. In this paper, he's actually talking about a Ferengi Alliance having a non-aggression pact signed with Dark Horizon, which is another alliance in the game. What's really interesting about this is we've all seen this action happen in games that have been more mature. Star Trek Online, EVE Online, when you have tens of thousands of players and it's been several years for these to develop. The fact that we've added blockchain and digital technology to make true ownership has really accelerated that curve as players feel a lot more connected to these items. By one, spending more money to acquire these items, but 2, also once they have it, there's a true sense of ownership. I've seen in our Discord chat users lending out chips to new players coming in so they can get a chance. And they're able to do that and securely lend out chips using blockchain technology to enforce that ownership. Jumping back here real quick. So CSC has set up multiple guilds. And one of the more interesting guilds that have recently set up, the Ferengi Alliance, did something that even we weren't expecting. They utilized blockchain technology to create a reward token for their clan members. So anyone who's played an MMO knows about clan systems. And you participate in clan activities and raids, they'll assign you points, and eventually you use those points to redeem items from your clan itself. Well, they took this to a whole new level and deployed their own blockchain-based token called Gold Press Platinum and assigned this out to clan members. So now clan members, I think over 50 of them at this point, have been trading this Gold Press Platinum token with the clan leadership for new ships in the game, been trading among themselves to buy new modules, and have created a whole secondary economy on top of the CSC economy just for themselves using blockchain technology to securely enforce these trades. Because now you no longer need to trust, if I give Steve 5 Gold Press Platinum, he'll give me that ship. The blockchain ensures that happens before the money is changed. So it's really interesting to see how players have taken this concept and relatively quickly, in a matter of weeks, adapted it, built their own systems on top of it, and have started creating these robust secondary and third markets. So this kind of brings us to blockchain in the 24th century. I had a lot of time to think about this, and blockchain technology probably did exist in the Star Trek universe, though maybe never called out. And one example, which is a little bit obscure, is Federation credits. Mentioned in TNG and Deep Space Nine, Federation credits is a currency that's used to barter with species outside the United Federation. The United Federation doesn't have a monetary economy, everyone works for the betterment of themselves as a society, but if you're dealing with Ferengi or Cardassians, you're going to need some type of medium of exchange. The fact that the Federation has some type of medium of exchange probably doesn't mean they set up a full banking infrastructure to support it. Instead, it makes complete sense to me utilizing a distributed blockchain that could be independently hosted across Ferengi computers, Federation computers, Cardassian computers to securely reconcile transactions between these different species. The next example is probably the Ferengi banking system. So the Ferengi have some unique characteristics we all know and love. And one of them probably involves a lack of trust between individuals. So the Ferengi banking system is most likely a distributed blockchain of Ferengi computers that maintain a record of ownership or how much platinum might be sitting in a vault somewhere. For me, on top of that, the Ferengi system could probably utilize something like what Ethereum has, smart contracts, to enforce the deals among Ferengis, since contract is a contract is a contract, but only among Ferengis. So that brings us to just a recap of what we discussed today at the end of our presentation. Blockchain first brought us Bitcoin in 2019. Bitcoin is a great example of currency replaced by a blockchain asset. You can buy pizza with it, you can exchange it for money or gold. In 2015, blockchain brought us Ethereum. Ethereum gave us the ability to have digital items for the first time ever, truly scarce and tradable independently of the initial creator. And that brings us to today's use of blockchain. And then in the future, in the 24th century, banking gold press platinum, Federation credits, possibly the board collective. And that's basically it for us today. Thank you, everyone, and I have some time for some questions if you have about blockchain, Star Trek, CSC. The mic's up there, so go ahead and come on up. Or I put everyone to sleep and there will be some questions. Oh, there we go.
Hey, so great presentation. Thank you very much. It was really well thought out.
Thank you for allowing
How
my 2 jokes.
So how did y'all end up like getting like the copyright partnership type of thing to actually make such a game, like the first sort of blockchain Star Trek game?
I mean, it's the wonderful people that control the Star Trek franchise. CBS saw what we're doing, saw what we did with Major League Baseball, and took a chance in a small company here with this idea.
Did you guys pitch it to them, or did they come to you with it?
I believe we pitched it to them.
Awesome, right on. It shows. It shows. You put a lot of thought into it. Like,
thank you.
So anytime anyone does something with either C721 or NFTs, I always wonder, and that's a question to you, how do you deal with the gas costs and because that can get pretty high, especially with 721 when you transfer them or something. And in general, people may realize you can have this token, but then you need Ether in addition to do stuff. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so thank you. It's a very technical question. I was actually going to avoid going into too much detail. But so yeah, Ethereum and blockchains have a lot of fundamental issues that prevents mainstream adoption. And part of what we're doing with our company is we developed a secondary layer built on top of the blockchain called Scarcity Engine. And it obfuscates all those gas costs to the end user. So you could actually own a digital item in our game without ever needing Ethereum. We generate the item, we mint it, we hold it for you in a temporary wallet, and at that point when you're ready and want to have your own wallet and transfer it into your own custody, then you can do that easily through our client.
So that means you're doing it off-chain and only put it on-chain on request, basically.
Absolutely, and this lets us do things that Ethereum can't do. For example, when we recently released some new items in the game, we sold about 10,500 of them in 3 seconds. There's no blockchain project out today that can do 10,500 transactions in 3 seconds, but our secondary layer solution can, and we built that to support mass mainstream adoption. Thank you for the question. Any other questions?
I think that's it. They're giving us that.
We just did a great job explaining this, Steve.
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I'm just going to end this the way I always want to.